Week 4 action is officially underway, and we've already seen a lopsided victory for the Detroit Lions up against divisional opponent Packers. In this game, it was all about the running game and specifically David Montgomery. 32 carries, 120 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 2 catches for 20 yards. He is experiencing the lion's share of the workload in this backfield, no pun intended. And Jahmyr Gibbs, moving forward, based on this, is really just a touchdown-dependent flex. It's unfortunate. He's super talented, clearly, very efficient on the ground as a rusher, but just not getting enough usage to really warrant anything beyond that. On the other side of this game, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon both very much so underperformed and underwhelmed. Negative game script can do that to running backs especially. And I would say that this might be a good spot to buy low on Aaron Jones, who looked really, really good, although on limited touches in week 1. So something to consider there. I obviously think next week at Vegas is a more favorable matchup as well. So might be a good opportunity to slide into the manager's DMs on Aaron Jones. For the pass catchers, first game back with Christian Watson. Obviously, not a whole lot to expect here. 13 targets for Romeo Doubs is impressive. I don't think that's going to necessarily stick. And so I think Watson, another good buy low candidate. First game back on the season after missing the first 3 with his hamstring issue. This is a good spot for Watson to be a buy low as well, in my opinion. On the other side, St. Brown, obviously great. And then Laporta continues to produce as a rookie. I think he's legit. Musgrave left this game with a concussion. He should be fine for week 5, but monitor that moving forward. All right, so we're going to jump into the first international game of the season, and that's the Falcons against the Jaguars. In this one, running backs, I like Bijan. I like Etienne. Both of those guys should make your lineup. Kind of cooling off on Algier a little bit. His snap percentage is steadily declining as I think they continue to ramp up Bijan's touches, which is what we expected moving into the year. You can see an inverse split there as that's trending in the right direction for Bijan. Etienne obviously has been pretty solid thus far, minus the Kansas City game. Atlanta is a pretty stout defense generally, but Etienne's getting so much utilization in this offense that it's a no-brainer. He has to go in your lineup. For the pass catchers here, honestly, I'm not I'm not thrilled about what's going on with Drake London in Atlanta. He's a super talented player. Really liked him coming out of USC, but he is just not able to be sustained by this low passing volume. So look elsewhere. I mean, if you benched him in week 2 and he popped off, I get it. You want to start him, but there's just not enough. There's just not enough going around in this offense to consistently rely on him. On the other side, we've just gotten the news that Zay Jones will not be playing in this game, so it's another good opportunity for Christian Kirk to fill that role in the higher percentage of snaps played, which is what you want to see. More routes run, more opportunities. Love to see it. Calvin Ridley has been really underwhelming since his week 1 blow up. This is a revenge game of sorts against his former team, so I expect him to put up points. I think more likely than not, week 1 was not a fluke. So I'm going to go with Ridley in my lineup again moving forward if I roster him. Tight ends here, Ingram, sure, start him. Pitts, same thing as Drake London. I don't think you can justify starting him given the lack of passing volume. All right, moving on to another division matchup, the Dolphins against the Bills. Now, the big story from last week was that Miami put up 70 points against Denver. I don't expect that to happen again this week. However, it does kind of give you the confidence to start pretty much all of their starters. Mostert and Achane both should be in your lineup, in addition to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. All of those players have explosive playmaking ability. they're going to be in your roster pretty much no matter what. Until something kind of susses out here in the running back room. But with no Jeff Wilson, it should primarily be Achane and Mostert. Ahmed limited at practice on Thursday. Actually on Wednesday. But he's not going to get factored in too much. I wouldn't be worried about him. On the Buffalo side, James Cook is continuing to produce pretty good fantasy numbers, I must say. Currently RB13, although with these numbers, it's not all that impressive. Either way, I think James Cook is a good player. Should have a good game again this week. On the receiving side, Diggs and Davis, I think start both of those guys for sure. And then Kincaid, Knox, they're kind of eating into each other's roles a little bit, which I don't particularly like. I think there are better options at tight end. Just neither of these guys have really produced, especially last week when they didn't have to. It was a low passing game for Josh Allen, only attempted 32 passes. So, yeah, not really great there. Moving on to Vikings at Panthers, two winless teams playing each other. Where have we seen that before with Minnesota? Anyway, running backs here. Miles Sanders, I think you know what to expect by now. Pretty low volume in the running game against Seattle, but increased volume in the receiving game, which is great to see in PPR. I don't think there's any problem flexing him. Alexander Mattison had a solid game last week. 27 opportunities is great. Chalk that up to the Chargers' rush defense being pretty weak. Carolina, a less weak run defense, if that makes sense. They're stronger against the run than the Chargers. And Cam Akers may trend towards playing this week, as you can see there. I'm really not not worried about Cam Akers taking a lot of touches from Madison right away. So I'm going to keep him on the bench. Madison, I think, is fine to be on your flex. Receivers, Jefferson, Addison, for sure. Thielen, yes, revenge game against Minnesota, former team. I think fire him up for sure, given how he's been utilized over the past two games, especially. He's been fantastic. Found the fountain of youth in Carolina. Jonathan Mingo, in the concussion protocol, limited in practice. I would say if he plays, you haven't seen enough to start him, so don't. If he doesn't play, I think that elevates DJ Chark, who had a good game despite the inefficiency against Seattle. I think that's a good spot, especially in deeper leagues, 12 teams or more, 12 teams or larger. Chark is a good option if Mingo misses. On the tight end front, Hawkinson, of course, he's been fantastic so far this season. Hayden Hurst has completely fallen off since week one when I first advocated for him. Apologies, but chasing tight ends it's a bit of a fool's errand at times. Just like chasing defenses or kickers, they're pretty inconsistent unless they're really, really good all the time. Well said, right? All right, moving on to another winless matchup here. Denver against Chicago. Broncos and Bears. Oh my, these teams are really bad. Russell Wilson, man, that contract is bad. That's really all I want to say about that right now. Justin Fields has been really underwhelming, not really getting a lot of that rushing volume that we saw in his later half of last season. Now, obviously, 47 yards, 59 yards it's fine, but it's really not getting the job done when he can't score more than one touchdown through the air. So, could be a good opportunity for Fields to bounce back here. It's a risky start. He's QB 18 at the moment in 6-point passing scoring. 6-point passing touchdown scoring. But yeah, Fields, he's got that floor. So you could go worse with other options out there. This is a little surprising to me, Roschon Johnson being projected as the highest scoring running back. But this is why I picked him up a few weeks ago, because he does kind of project to take over this role at some point. Given how Khalil Herbert's been performing, it's nothing special. So not starting him this week. But a good player to stash if he's still available in your league. Javonte Williams, man, this feels like a buy low, but just the utilization, the rushing inefficiency, how horrible the Broncos look on offense, it's not all that enticing. He's a low-end flex, definitely touchdown dependent given how he's performed so far. So take that for what it's worth. On the pass catchers, Judy and Sutton, I think, are both flexes. DJ Moore, yes. Anyone beyond that, no. Not Claypool, not Mooney, and probably not even Kmet with how he's playing. Just not really getting it done for me. All right, next up is Ravens at Browns. And for this one, this running back room, avoid, I think, at all costs. Cleveland's defense has been fantastic thus far, and I don't expect either of these guys to really make a big impact for the team against Cleveland, so I'm fading that running back room. Too many mouths, not enough talent. On the other side, Jerome Ford, I think, is a great sell high. He's been scoring touchdowns since Nick Chubb left with injury, and I think that's just not really sustainable. Obviously, 20 opportunities in week 2 is nice. Only 13 against Tennessee's defense last week. And the inefficiency, I mean, my goodness, I know, tough matchup, but the fact that he's scoring touchdowns is definitely bailing you out for right now. It might be tough to trade him with his week 5 bye just coming up, but if you can hold him through the bye and then sell him moving on, San Francisco, another tough matchup coming off of a bye. So, yeah, just not really all that enticed with Jerome Ford long term. I think he's a good sell high candidate. Onto the pass catchers here. Amari Cooper got robbed last week. He should have had 2 receiving touchdowns, but the refs blew the whistle despite being right there on the... Okay, I'm a little salty, as you can tell. My name is highlighted above him because I roster him, but still, I think bad call. And either way, he's been great, so I'm not worried about him. Zay Flowers, I think, yes, is a start. Odell Beckham misses another practice on Thursday. Friday practices are most important. I like to get these videos out sooner rather than later so that people have a chance to see it and kind of make their decisions. So Friday practice will be released later today as of this recording. But Odell Beckham's been really, really not great so far. I'm not interested in starting him. Anyway, tight ends. David Njoku continues to just be meh as a tight end. This could be a spot for him to improve with Deshaun Watson playing pretty well last week, but you probably have better options, so just going to leave it at that. Next up is Steelers at Texans. In this one, Najee Harris has been really bad so far. Now, the rushing efficiency is not horrible, but the rushing volume is, and the receiving volume is almost non-existent. So Najee Harris, everybody runs against Houston. If Najee Harris cannot get it done this week, it's officially time to panic on him. Jaylen Warren, he is just not getting enough utilization, I think, in this offense to really justify starting or flexing, unless you're in a deeper league. Probably 14 teams or deeper for him, so not really excited about that. Dameon Pierce, he found the end zone last week, which totally bailed you out. Less than 40 rushing yards in 3 straight games is really, really concerning. So if you have better options, if you picked up Devon Achane off of waivers, or you have Kyren Williams, or whatever, I think there are better options. Jerome Ford maybe even ahead of Dameon Pierce. I'm not sure about that one, but yeah, I would avoid Pierce if possible. Pass catchers, George Pickens continues to produce in Deontay Johnson's absence. Fine with you flexing him. Nico Collins had an off game against Jacksonville in addition to Robert Woods. Sorry, had a brain fart there. But both of these guys were producing early on. And I know, obviously, the man of the hour is Tank Dell, who's coming on as of late. I think, honestly, all 3 of these pass catchers are viable as flexes given the matchup. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out. But Tank Dell, like, he's a great example of a player who I'm more comfortable starting than Drake London. So just to kind of give you some perspective there. Tight ends, Freiermuth, the volume is still very low. He's touchdown dependent. Not really too excited about him. Schultz, very similar situation. I mean, these yardage totals in these games is just unbelievably low. So probably have better options there as well. Moving on to the Rams at the Colts. Anthony Richardson is cleared to play, it appears, which is great news for him and his fantasy managers. Excited to see him back out there. He's been fantastic so far, especially as a fantasy producer. And the Colts are 2-1, so you can't complain too much. Zach Moss has been absolutely fantastic as a fill-in for Jonathan Taylor, and it kind of makes me nervous a little bit as someone who rosters Taylor in this league in particular. But it doesn't seem like they're really mending anything, and I'm kind of holding out for Taylor to get traded, which would immediately just explode his value, which would be great. But it doesn't seem like Zach Moss is going to be that much of a downgrade for Indianapolis to where they would be like, well, we need Jonathan Taylor. So that's my 2 cents on that. Kyren Williams is getting fantastic utilization in the passing game and handling a decent amount of rushing attempts, so fire him up once again, I would say, as well. On the pass catchers, you get one more game without Cooper Kupp, which means Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell are both flex/starting options in this offense. Michael Pittman, yes, you should be starting him. He's been great so far. I think I ranked him too low based on how I was expecting Anthony Richardson to be producing as a thrower. Josh Downs is a player who, in deeper leagues, I'm fine with you flexing if you're desperate. We're still pre-bye weeks, so you shouldn't be that desperate. But he's a good stash play. 12 targets, 8 catches last week. I can't recall if I discussed him or not in the waiver video, but yeah, that's a player that I'm interested in kind of holding, grabbing and stashing, similar to Tank Dell. We'll see if he also emerges. Josh Downs, that is. Tight ends, Higbee's been better against Cincinnati. It's kind of more of what we expected from him. So this could be another opportunity for him to perform well at that position. Keep in mind, these are 1.5 point per reception scoring, so numbers are a little elevated here. But regardless, he's producing pretty well, coming off a good game. Kyron Granson, not ready to take the plunge on him yet. The yardage totals just aren't there for me. Okay, moving on to the Buccaneers at the Saints. Classic rivalry against Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans. We'll see if there's an ejection in this game. Hopefully for fantasy managers, that's not the case, but we've seen it before. Rachaad White continues to get volume and opportunities, continues to be inefficient. So, that's kind of where you are with him. It's unfortunate. New Orleans does have a pretty challenging rush defense, so I would say lower expectations in general. Maybe he gets more involved in the passing game, which would help quite a bit. Alvin Kamara, first game in for the team, obviously, after serving his 3-game suspension. If you've been getting by without him, I would honestly say leave him on your bench for this week and see what you get out of him for his first game back. It's probably going to be relatively underwhelming. I'd honestly, 13.5 fantasy points seems a bit steep in my opinion, but only time will tell with that one. On the pass catching side, Godwin and Evans, yeah, keep throwing them out there. Lower expectations for Evans, who historically has performed really poorly against the Saints, like I mentioned before. Those guys have serious beef between Lattimore and Evans, so lower expectations there. Olave, Michael Thomas, this is going to be their first game with Jameis Winston this season, so anything could happen. And that being said, I think they still make your lineup. Tight ends, not interested in any tight ends in this game. Moving on to Commanders at Eagles. This should be a great spot for Washington to fall to 2-2. Philadelphia's defense has been solid, although not as good as last season with all the off-season departures. But with that being said, Philadelphia looks absolutely dominant. DeAndre Swift with a combined rushing total of 305 yards over the past 2 weeks. It's pretty fantastic, and it makes me feel good about ranking him as highly as I did. I'm going to continue to pat myself on the back for that one, but anyway, Kenneth Gainwell did see 14 touches on the ground last week in a blowout game against the Bucs. This is not the guy that you want rostered in this backfield. It's definitely DeAndre Swift, given the production, given the efficiency. But Gainwell is a good handcuff option if you are so inclined. On the other side, Brian Robinson, it's a tough matchup. I'm not really expecting him to get a lot of carries in this game, similar to what we saw in the blowout against the Bills last week. So this might be a game where Brian Robinson should make your bench. I mean, he's touchdown dependent. If he gets a touchdown, he'll make it worth your day, but it's really how lucky do you feel in that regard. For the pass catchers, McLaurin, he continues to produce despite the poor quarterback play. It's nothing special, but it is flex worthy, so there's that. Jahan Dotson, on the other hand, he is just completely underwhelming so far. And this could be a week where he does surprise, but he's been really disappointing. I'm keeping him on my bench in this league where we start 3 wide receivers and 2 flexes in a 10-team format. So give you some perspective on that. For Philadelphia's pass catchers, obviously A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are both starters. No argument there. This might be a good game for Logan Thomas, given how we saw him produce in Week 1 with 8 targets. That's to be determined. He was practicing in a limited fashion on Thursday. If he is available, might be a sneaky play if you're in need of a kind of a flyer at tight end, more of a deeper league consideration. And Dallas Goedert, yeah, obviously you're starting him. On to Bengals at the Titans. Mixon, you're starting. No argument there. He's been getting the volume. I like him. I think that there's obviously more opportunity in the passing game given the matchup. He hasn't been incredibly inefficient with his touches so far, but kind of a quiet start for him, I would say, in general. Tennessee is a tough rushing defense. We're going to need to see him get more involved in the passing game to really return value for you in fantasy, but you're not benching him. Too talented of a player to do that. Similarly, Derrick Henry, horrible game last week. Only 38% of the snaps. Kind of maybe showing his age finally, especially behind the worst offensive line in the NFL. That being said, Derrick Henry is always liable to go off for multiple touchdowns any given week, so you're still starting him. It's not yet time to panic. Tyjae Spears out, snapping him in a couple of these games. Obviously games where Tennessee's playing from behind, and he has more of that pass-catching role, more of the passing down responsibility in the offense. So it's honestly not all that surprising, but you're starting Henry, you're not starting Spears yet. Pass catchers, Chase and Higgins, yes, those are in your lineup, of course. DeAndre Hopkins has been really disappointing so far. It's an odd choice to sign with Tennessee if you're Hopkins, but I think it has something to do with the compensation he's receiving. Either way, he practiced Wednesday in full and then had a limited practice on Thursday, more indicative of maintenance rather than a setback. So Hopkins, we need to see these numbers come up. Week 1 was better in that regard for sure, but he's been banged up over the past few weeks. So we're going to see, hopefully Friday puts in a full practice and then is good to go against Cincinnati, which would be a good opportunity for him. Everyone else here, including tight ends, not interested. All right, moving on to the afternoon slate. We've got the Raiders at the Chargers, 2 1-2 teams here. Running back wise, Josh Jacobs, I need him to start producing more. He's getting more involved in the passing game, which is good. And the rushing efficiency is moving in the right direction. I'm banking on the Chargers defense being a plus matchup for Jacobs and really getting a get-right game here. which would be good to get some momentum heading in to the next month of games, we'll say. On the other side, Austin Eckler has missed the previous 2. He practiced on Thursday and Wednesday for the first time since the injury in week 1. So that's good news. They do have their bye in week 5. Worst case scenario is that they hold him out week 4. It's another Joshua Kelly game where he's been horrible. And then week 5 they go on their bye, and then you get him back in week 6 and he just hits the ground running. That's worst case scenario here. If Josh Kelly gets the start, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, what are we doing? We're not starting Josh Kelly if he is the lead back in this offense. It's not wise. So anyway, pass catchers, Adams and Myers, start those guys. Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer, start those guys. It'll be interesting to see how much more involvement Quentin Johnston gets in this game now that Mike Williams is done for the year. I do expect that snap percentage to move up, and he could surprise us in week 1, but I wouldn't start him. Too risky for that. And then tight ends, Gerald Everett. There are certainly worse options out there, so if you need him, this could be an opportunity for him to kind of step up in that absence as well. All right, moving on to Patriots at Cowboys. This is a revenge game for Ezekiel Elliott against his former franchise. Former teammate Tony Pollard should continue to be very good. It'll be interesting to see what New England's approach is in defending Dallas, whether they choose to take away Pollard or Lamb. That's kind of Bill Belichick's MO. He takes away your favorite toy. So we'll be seeing on that. I'll say it this way. One of those guys is going to severely underperform projections based on that. For Ramondre Stevenson, continue playing him. Obviously, last week was not good. The Jets defense plays hard, and so it's a tough matchup. Obviously, Dallas, you would think was a tough matchup until they got beaten by the Arizona Cardinals. So we're still on fraud alert for Dallas moving forward. We'll see how this game goes. Not expecting a win for New England, but hey, it'd be exciting. Anyway, on the receiving end, yeah, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, you cannot start. He's been absolutely horrendous through his first 2 games active with the Cowboys. It's looking more like his decline last season was more indicative of him than his quarterback. So with that being said, yeah, don't start him. If you're desperate, Michael Gallup might be a flex consideration. I would say you got to be in at least a 12-team league to make that move. And then Jake Ferguson, I like him. Hunter Henry, I do like him. It's not a good matchup, but who else are they going to throw the ball to other than Henry and Ramondre and maybe a little bit of Zeke? These pass catchers just aren't really getting the job done here. So Henry, if you need him, I think you can start him. He's a tight end at the end of the day, so don't get your hopes up. That's kind of the way to look at it. Moving on to the Cardinals at the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, obviously he is the best. He's been fantastic this year, getting almost all of the touches. Obviously 61% is not the norm, but that was not a close game on Thursday night of last week. James Conner has been maybe outperforming what people expected from him this year. Very efficient on the ground, pretty much non-existent through the air. 5 catches in a game is great, but for 8 yards is kind of a joke. So San Francisco, tough matchup. James Conner might be a bit of a reality check for him. We'll see on that, but I think you're still starting him regardless. On the pass catching, Marquise Brown is the only wide receiver for Arizona that I'm interested in starting. He's been very, very solid so far. Debo and Ayuk are both in the game healthy. They should both be in your lineup. And then tight ends, Kittle, of course, yes, and Ertz. I'm going to give Ertz another chance if I roster him. This volume that you saw from weeks 1 and 2 are just too enticing to move away from just because he didn't get a lot of involvement in a game where, hey, Arizona was actually in the lead. So expect to be playing from behind, more passing volume for Ertz and Marquise Brown and James Conner for that case. Moving on, what a fantastic primetime game. Kansas City Chiefs against the New York Jets. Obviously, the Aaron Rodgers injury is unfortunate. 8.5 fantasy points for Zach Wilson on a 6-point passing touchdown league seems a little mean, but he's been really bad. I've been saying it for years. Everyone's piling on this guy, and I just feel bad for him. He didn't ask for this. So either way, the offense on the Jets side, it's just pretty much untouchable. It's pretty radioactive at this point. Breece Hall really got us thinking that he was back in a big way week 1, only to turn around and be really bad for weeks 2 and 3. So I'm not really all that thrilled about how he's producing. Similar to Dalvin Cook, he's been really underwhelming as well. These guys just can't really justifiably make your lineup. Isaiah Pacheco, in positive game script where it was like 41 to something low against the Bears, he gets more rush, gets more run. Said the same thing twice, whatever. Isaiah Pacheco, though, in this matchup, lower expectations. He should be getting closer to single than double digits here. I know that's a huge distinction, but either way, Pacheco less enticing than his previous performance. That's the best way to say it. Garrett Wilson, you have to keep starting him. He continues to produce in spite of Zach Wilson, and that's kind of where we are with that. Unfortunately, there are no other pass catchers in this game that are not named Travis Kelce that are worth starting in your lineup. So that's that. And then moving on to the Monday night primetime game, it's the Seahawks against the Giants. In this one, you're starting Ken Walker. He was fantastic last week against Carolina. And yeah, that's kind of that for the running backs. If Saquon Barkley plays, of course you're starting him. If he doesn't play, don't start him. And if that is the case and Matt Breida is the lead running back, I wouldn't if I were you. I mean, the one touchdown, 17 rushing yards. I know it was San Francisco, but we saw Kyron Williams put up numbers against them. So it's not like they're untouchable on defense. But anyway, Matt Breida, no thank you. Especially Monday night. It's going to be so last minute, I guess you'll have no other choice. So in that case, make sure to put your flexes in. This is a great segue for putting your flexes in the latest starting game possible, if that makes sense. The rationale being you want to have as much flexibility as possible for those last minute decisions. So that's kind of how you should look at it. On the receiving side, Metcalf and Lockett need to be in your lineup. JSN, not quite there yet, but that's totally fine. You didn't draft him to be a starter just yet. On the tight ends, Darren Waller continues to get volume over the past 2 weeks. At some point, he's going to put up a big game. These numbers are slightly inflated. Again, 1.5 points per reception in this league. But, yeah, Waller's getting volume. That's kind of what you have to chase with tight ends. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Hope you learned a few things. Subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football and you want to see more content like this. And until next time, bye-bye.